All right, deep divers, you guys sent in a pretty interesting request, and honestly, I'm excited to dive into this one with you. You want to know if Estee Lauder stock is worth taking a look at? And let me tell you, we've got a whole bunch of reports and transcripts and articles all about this company, and it seems like they might be in a bit of a tricky situation right now.
Yeah, you could say that. Estee Lauder is definitely facing some challenges, but what makes this deep dive really interesting is that what's happening with them kind of shows us what's happening in like the whole global economy and like how consumers are changing too.
Okay, so before we really get into the details, let's make sure everyone's on the same page here. So Estee Lauder, for anyone who doesn't know, is a huge global player in the beauty world. We're not just talking about like the one Estee Lauder brand, but like they have a ton of other famous brands too.
Oh yeah, totally. Like Clinique, MAC, La Mer. Have you heard of that one? That La Mer cream. It's like super expensive, but everyone seems to be obsessed with it. And then there's Aveda, Jo Malone London. They even own The Ordinary, which has gotten like insanely popular in the last few years because it's, a more affordable skincare.
Right, right. So they've got all these brands from like the super luxurious to the more, everyday stuff, and they sell their products everywhere, right? Like all over the world, department stores, their own stores, online, even at those duty-free shops and airports.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of what made them so successful for so long. They've got this huge reach in all these different brands. But now, even with all that, they're running into some pretty serious roadblocks. The stock is down. It's currently at $70.71, which is down 1.20% from just yesterday. And even the analysts are kind of all over the place. Some think it's going to go up, some think it's going to go down. It's hard to say for sure.
Well, that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive, right? We need to like break down these challenges, really see what's going on, and try to figure out if there's still potential for this stock to do well. So let's get into those roadblocks you mentioned. What's like the biggest thing they're dealing with right now?
Well, one of the biggest issues that things are slowing down in some of their key markets, especially in China. For years, China's growing middle class was like spending a ton of money on luxury goods, and Estée Lauder was doing really well because of that. But now things are kind of shifting.
You mean like with the economic slowdown we keep hearing about? How does that affect a company like Estee Lauder specifically?
It's not just that, actually. It's a few things all happening at the same time. For one, the Chinese government has been cracking down on like people spending a lot of money just to show off, and that's definitely had an impact. Plus, there's this growing sense of like national pride among Chinese consumers. They're starting to prefer brands that are from China. So even though Estee Lauder has invested a lot in the Chinese market, they're still running into some unexpected obstacles.
Wow, that's way more going on in China than I realize. It's not just the economy slowing down, it's like a whole cultural shift too. I could see why that's a big deal for Estee Lauder.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge concern. And it's not just China either. The travel retail market has taken a hit too, especially in Asia. Remember those duty-free shops we talked about, where with less people traveling internationally, sales at those shops have like totally plummeted. And that's another area where Estee Lauder has historically done really well.
So we've got slowing growth in China, a slump in travel retail, and the report also mentions just some of their specific brands aren't doing so hot, like Tom Ford and Too Faced. What's going on there?
Yeah, both of those brands have been struggling, especially in the Asia Pacific region, which, like we said, has been a tough market lately. Tom Ford is positioned as this like ultra luxe brand, and maybe that level of extravagance just isn't resonating with consumers right now, with everything going on in the world. Too Faced, on the other hand, is more in that affordable makeup category. And they might be facing tougher competition from these newer online brands that are really good at getting the attention of younger shoppers.
So it's not just stuff happening outside the company. They've got internal challenges too, with some of their brands needing to adjust to how people are shopping now. This is starting to feel like a whole bunch of bad news for Estee Lauder all at once.
You're not wrong. It's definitely a complicated situation. And they're feeling the pressure to change and adapt, for sure.
Well, all right. So
So,
so we've talked about a lot of the problems that Estee Lauder is facing. But before we totally give up on them, the reports did say there might be some good news too, right? Like some ways they could get through all this and maybe even come out ahead.
yeah, for sure. It's not all bad news. What's really interesting to me is that Estee Lauder isn't just sitting around. They're actually trying to fix things. They've got this whole restructuring plan called Beauty Reimagined to try and deal with these challenges.
Beauty Reimagined, huh? I haven't heard of that one. What is that all about? Sounds like a pretty big deal.
Oh, it is. It's got a lot of different parts to it. But one of the main things is that they're really focusing on reaching customers directly. Like they're going to be more active in those online marketplaces, trying out some new markets and even increasing their advertising and promotions.
So it's like instead of waiting for customers to come to them, they're going out and finding them where they already are.
Exactly. They're realizing that people are shopping differently now, and they need to be quicker and more flexible to keep up. They're also trying to come up with new products faster. to keep up with the latest trends and what people want.
That makes sense. The beauty industry is all about what's new and exciting, right? If we could figure out those trends fast, it could really help them out. But what about those bold efficiencies the reports mentioned? That part always makes me a little nervous.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Bold efficiencies usually means cutting costs. And that can be tough. Estee Lauder is doing some major restructuring, which could mean job cuts, outsourcing some of their work, and making their supply chain more efficient.
Well, I guess it makes sense that they need to tighten their belts a little with all these challenges they're facing. But you do have to wonder how it's going to affect the people who work there and their morale.
It's definitely something to keep an eye on. The report talks about the risks of making these cuts, and investors are going to want to see how the company handles it all.
But there was one thing in the report that really caught my attention. It said that Estee Lauder is using AI to improve their operations. And it's not something you usually hear about with a beauty brand. But I'm kind of interested.
I know, right? It seems weird at first, but it's actually a pretty smart move. They're using AI to get better at predicting demand, which helps them manage their inventory better and avoid having too much stuff they can't sell. They're also using it to speed up some of their processes, which frees up their resources so they can be more creative.
So it's not about replacing people with robots. It's about using AI to make everything run smoother and better. That's a lot more thoughtful than I was picturing. But at the end of the day, investors really care about one thing: money. So what do the financials tell us about how Estee Lauder is doing?
Well, as you might expect, it's kind of a mixed bag. Their revenue for fiscal year 2024 was $15.61 billion, which is a lot of money, but it's actually down 1.9% from last year.
So they're still making a lot of money, but that drop is definitely something to worry about, especially for investors who are looking for growth. What about their profits?
Their net income for fiscal year 2024 was $829 million, which is better than last year when they actually lost money. But it's still way lower than what they were making a few years ago. So there's definitely some ups and downs there.
And investors don't like ups and downs, right? It makes things unpredictable, which is never a good sign. What else should investors be looking at in their financials?
Another important thing is their free cash flow, or FCF. It's basically the money a company has left over after paying for all their operating expenses and investments. It shows how much financial flexibility they have.
Okay, so how does Estee Lauder's free cash flow look? Do they have enough money to pay for all these big plans they have?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's something investors are really paying attention to. Estee Lauder's free cash flow has been going up and down in recent years, which is definitely something that might make people hesitate.
Okay, so we've got declining revenue and profits that are kind of all over the place. And then there's the whole free cash flow situation. Doesn't sound so good. But wait, didn't the report say something about the stock maybe being undervalued? Isn't that like a good thing for potential investors?
Yeah, that's an important point. Some analysts think that the stock price right now doesn't really show how much the company's actually worth. They think that Estee Lauder has a lot going for it, like their strong brands, their global presence, and this Beauty Reimagined plan could really boost their profits in the long run.
So it's like they're saying, don't focus on the problems now, think about the potential later.
Exactly. They see this as a chance to buy a good company at a lower price. But of course, there's another side to this.
I bet I know what you're going to say. The analysts who are less optimistic about Estee Lauder, what are they worried about?
You got it. The people who are less optimistic are worried about those restructuring costs, and they're not sure what's going to happen with the global economy. They think those costs are going to hurt the company's profits, especially in the short term. And they're not convinced that Estee Lauder can bounce back quickly enough from those weak markets like China.
So basically, it's like a tug of war between being hopeful and being cautious. Sounds like deciding whether or not to invest in Estee Lauder really depends on how much risk you're willing to take and what your goals are as an investor.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. If you're looking to make a quick buck, Estee Lauder might not be the right choice right now. But if you're thinking long term and you believe in the company's ability to change and come up with new ideas, and you're okay with a little bit of risk, and the current price might actually be a really good deal.
I think that's a really important takeaway from this whole deep dive. It's not as simple as just buy or sell. There are good reasons on both sides.
And that's why it's so important to do your own research, look at things from different angles, and really think about what's best for you.
We've given you a lot to think about today, but at the end of the day, it's your decision. So what do you think? What are your biggest takeaways from our deep dive into Estee Lauder?
It all comes down to what kind of investor you are. Are you okay with taking some risks? Or do you prefer to play it safe? Estee Lauder might be a good choice for someone who's in it for the long haul, but it's really important to do your own research and decide if it fits with your own financial goals.
And even if you decide that Estee Lauder isn't for you, hopefully this deep dive has given you a better understanding of the beauty industry. It's a pretty fascinating world, full of innovation, competition, and of course, lots of glamour.
Yeah, it's always changing too, because of how consumers are changing, new technology, and what's happening in the global economy.
Totally. It's more than just makeup and skincare. It's a reflection of all these bigger trends.
And remember, this deep dive is just the beginning. There's always more to learn and explore. That's what makes knowledge so great. It's like a never-ending adventure.
Absolutely. And we're here to help you along the way. So if you enjoyed this episode and you want to help us keep making these deep dives, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on our future adventures into the worlds of business, tech, culture, and everything in between.
We really appreciate you joining us on this journey. Keep those deep dive requests coming, and we'll see you next time.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep on diving.